Spotlighting Hawaii's leaders.
We want to bring in Governor David Ige.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Lieutenant Governor, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Mayor Derek Kawakami.
Thank you so much, Senator, for being here.
Spotlighting the issues.
Where is the virus right now in our community?
How much is this overall going to cost the state?
How are you responding to the community's concerns? Talk about the level of citations that you guys are writing.
Spotlight Hawaii with Yanji Denise and Ryan Kalei Suji on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs and Beachside Roofing.
Well, good morning, and thank you so much for tuning in on this Aloha Friday. I'm Ryan Kalei Suji, joined by Yanji Denise, and this is Spotlight Hawaii on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. Yanji, this morning we are focusing in on the Honolulu Police Department and a search for its new chief.
That's right. Ray Bannock has served as the interim police chief since June 1st of 2021. But since then, of course, there has been a search to find a permanent replacement for Susan Ballard, who, of course, retired some time ago last year. So we've asked Shannon Alivado, who is the chair of the Honolulu Police Commission, along with former Lieutenant Governor and former Attorney General and now Honolulu Police Commission member Doug Chin, to join us this morning to talk about the search and how that is going. A lot of people interested to know. So Shannon, let's start with you. Where are we in this process right now?
Thank you, Yunji and Ryan, for this opportunity to update the public about where we are. We are happy to report we're underway with the chief selection. On March 17th, we have invited all candidates who have shown an interest in applying for the position to sit for a written examination. As we reported a couple months ago, this starts the process with respect to all 19 applicants, 12 that are from in-state and 9 that are from out of state to sit for the written examination. After the written examination, those who move forward will be invited to sit for the assessment center. During the assessment center, the candidates that have made it that far will go through some exercises where they will be put into real life situations and ask questions as to how they would respond. This will include not only interviews that are live through an assessment center of professionals administering the questions, but also just interaction with the commission's consultant and those assessors that will take place. And thereafter, what we would expect is that 3 to 5 candidates will then move on to the final stages. And from there, the commission will be engaging again with the public with respect to which candidates have made it thus far and then receive public comments. And at that stage, Yunji, we feel that the community will be able to provide further input. Stakeholders from law enforcement will also be able to provide input.
And so when we're looking at this process, there's a lot of steps, obviously, that need to take place. You just kind of went through all of that right there. What is the time frame you think of how long this process will take?
Well, this process has already taken much longer than we had anticipated. Unfortunately, through the procurement process, we had to bring our consultant on board. But we have asked the consultant to work with us in shortening the timeline. We expect another 4 months before we're able to at least do the final interviews. If we can shorten that in any way without cutting efficiencies in choosing our next chief, we will be addressing those as we go along.
Doug, I want to say something there, which is that I think it has been a very careful and deliberate process. And certainly there are a few people who say that the process could go faster. I support what we've done. I mean, I feel like what's happened even before the consultant came on board, we had several meetings where we were able to hear from a lot of different people in the community who were wanting us as commissioners to make sure that when we're choosing the next police chief, given the past history of the department, to make sure that we were really thinking hard about what 21st century policing should be like, what the priorities of a police department and what law enforcement should be as we're moving into the future and into a new generation. And I have to say that that kind of information, not only from people who are trying to, I'd say kind of from the progressive side of the sphere, who are kind of trying to get us to think about those things, but also from the unions and from people who are very much pro law enforcement and come from that background. We've been able to take all that in, and all that is part of, has been part of just us being able to prepare for picking a chief. In fact, Chair Shannon, I was going to actually point out there was actually this great presentation that was done by high school students that actually did their own. They did their own survey of high school students in terms of what they were looking for the police chief. So I don't mean to take over being the interviewer, but I just wanted to make sure that Chair Shannon was able to talk about it.
Please go ahead. Yeah, let's hear a little bit about the
Sorry,
input you're getting. No. Please. Shannon, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think that's what was different about our process. It was deliberate. It was just efficient in trying to reach out to groups that don't necessarily participate in our process in the past. And the Centers for Tomorrow's Leaders, high school students within our public and private high schools approached us and wanted to provide input. And what they came back with was a presentation during our January 2022 meeting. They provided us input from over 200 high school students identifying what they thought was primary top ranked skills that they would like to see in the chief of police. And as we were able to receive information, the top ranked skills included integrity, service orientation, self-control. These were top threes that were coming from high school students. So this type of input, again, was what we wanted to hear from the community. And we think it's going to add value in bringing on our next chief of police.
When we look at some of those qualities that you did mention, we also know that there was another survey that was done in the community that helped to shine a light on what some members of the community are looking for. If you can share some of the results that came out from that and what you're hearing from the community about what they want to see in this next position. Shannon, we'll start with you.
Yes, we had over 1,000 responses through our community survey that took place during the first part of February. And we're very happy that we are able to capture that information and then again, use it in providing the applicants an opportunity to understand what the community wants. And again, we asked for the best characteristics. They were able to choose from over 25 with respect to what would be the highest ranking department challenges that they see the incoming chief would have. And also just hear from the community as to what they indicated was their biggest concerns. Was it basic crime reduction? Did they want to see more community policing, more cultural awareness? The results of the survey have not yet been published, and our consultant is actually going through those. But what I think we want to actually highlight is the fact that we were able to put out this survey and get responses that were timely and will be able to be used in real time. And I'll let Doug add in further.
Sure. I think what was really helpful from it was that they haven't told us substantively what the results were yet, but the types of people and the cross section of the community that we were able to get from the 1,000 responses, that was actually very helpful. So in other words, they were able to tell us that the people who were responding, they were self-reporting zip codes from all around Oahu. So that was very helpful. So the 8 districts that the police department comprises of. But in addition to that, they came from different backgrounds. So you had people who were from law enforcement, but you had a lot of people who were responding who were not law enforcement. There was a number, like about 30% who were retired, but then the rest of the people were not retired, and they all fell into different categories. So whether it was labor, or whether it was professional, or whether it was someone who was not employed, all of these people got a chance to respond. And so I think one of the things that the consultants told us was that over 1,000 responses was pretty good for this metropolitan area, and was able to give them the ability to get good comments.
I'm interested, there's a bunch of comments here, and this one sort of sums it up here from Nani, who says, integrity and self-control much needed. I think an out-of-state chief is needed. And there are a couple of other comments here also echoing that it should be someone from out of state. I know that there are other people who are watching who feel like someone who would be in state would be better. They'd have perhaps more cultural awareness. Shannon, how are you looking at that balance in terms of selecting someone either from Hawaii or not from Hawaii?
I think that's a good point that viewers are talking about, because what we wanted to do was ensure that the best candidates move forward. And we have deliberately used a consultant to ensure that those best candidates move forward. So whether they are from in-state or out of state, we want to see what candidates surface as the most qualified to hold this position, because we see it as a long-term, we want somebody that is committed to the community, that is willing to stay in Honolulu and really address some of the needed change needed within the department.
And Doug, did you have anything else to add on this, this choice or preference that maybe some may have?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, what I wanted to say is, Honolulu is the HPD is one of the largest police departments in the whole country. And so I think having this kind of deliberate process is very important. And I think as commissioners, when we make our choice, it's also important that we're not introducing our own biases or our own prejudices into the process. So I think what's helpful about this beginning stage, where all the applicants that we don't know who they are, they're filling out a written exam, going through an assessment center. When we get the 5 finalists to be able to choose from, we can have a sense that these are the best qualified people who are being put in front of us to be able to make a choice. And so I think that's going to be helpful. There's pros and cons in terms of in-state or out-of-state. I mean, I certainly think that someone who is in-state probably has a better sense of the local community. In other words, I think it is fair to say that we are unique in the way our ethnic makeup is, and the fact that we have so many people from different diverse ethnic backgrounds. So I think whoever it is, whether they're in-state or out-of-state, I do hope that they are somebody that understands that and is sensitive to disenfranchised communities and people who are more likely to be arrested than others.
When we look at some of the other issues that has come up with this position, there have been some in the community who have been critical of just the overall transparency of the department, with the chiefs being available to make public comments or being able to appear in front of the media. How much of that will be a part of this selection process? Is that something that you would like to see in the next chief, is somebody that is able to go in front of the media and someone who is transparent? Where does that fall in line with some of the things that you're looking for?
Definitely. I think that's a very high priority for the next chief and even the interim chief as we do a search. But I think what is necessary is that not only that they be open with the media, but also in meeting with community, right? And I think that's what we've been looking at, not only in the previous administration and the current, but also for the new chief, because the community are the ones that don't feel like they're communicated with enough. And how do we get that bridge that gap with the communities that don't feel like they're being in touch with?
I was going to say, I filled out the survey myself, so I'm one of the 1,000 people that answered the survey. And so when they were asking for the qualities of a chief, I put down strong interpersonal skills and strong communication skills. I don't think that's the only part of running the department, because I think there's a huge administrative component that's involved when you have to run such a large government agency. But I do think that being able to be the face of the department, to be able to speak to the media, like in other words, speak to external groups, the media, community groups, and also to be able to interact with people internally, I think that's critical.
Yeah, Doug, let's talk a little bit about the process. Shannon did say that it's taking a little bit longer, and I know that you focus really on, how deliberate that you want to be in making this choice. But what do you say to folks who say this is taking just too long?
Well, I think it's the right way to go. Honestly, I think we've had, we're coming out of a time where at least 2 chiefs ago, I think the city was rocked by a very serious scandal and what happened with Chief K. Aloha. I think it's probably one of the most serious things that happened in the history of Oahu. And for all of us, I think we want to make sure that whoever is our next chief, now that the previous chief had retired early and left us with this situation, we just want to make sure that we are making the right choice. I don't think it's just that too. I think historically, I think we're in a moment where the people in the community are really interested in what the future direction of the department is going to be. And when I say department, I mean the police department. Because I think with everything that's happened in the national news, and I think with people really caring about what's happening with law enforcement in general. We want to make sure that we're just not rushing into like, who's the next person that we can put in there, but that we're really making a deliberate choice. And so I think that's where us being able to listen to as many groups as we have has been helpful. And we'll get there. We have an interim chief now, and I think Chief Bannock has been doing a great job. There's times when he doesn't do a great job, but we call him on it, and I think he listens to it, and I appreciate that. And I think when he does do a great job and his team does a great job, we also are able to appreciate him for those good things that they're doing.
Yeah, Shannon, I want to get your thoughts on that as well, because in addition to trying to find this police chief as that is presented in front of the commission, you folks also have a number of other issues and things that you also deal with on the commission itself, and the things that you are having to do with the current things that are happening with the department and with Interim Chief Bannock. I'm wondering if you can share how you feel that he's done during this time and your overall assessment of the leadership that he's provided during this interim period.
Thank you, Ryan. Yeah, Chief Bannock has actually been very forthcoming with the commission, especially in ideas that we have in ways to improve. One of them being just making a more standardized request and response to body-worn camera coverage, because that has been one of the areas where the public and the media has said there has been not a very uniform response when there are requests that come in, and we think that Chief Bannock has made it a priority to address those concerns, as well as communication, increasing communication with communities, directly outreaching with those that may have feel like they're over-policed or underrepresented within different groups. And I think those characteristics are very positive ones. And he's just been very approachable from the commission's perspective.
Doug, you said that they would narrow it down to 5. Does the outside consultant do that, or does the commission do us? Tell us a little bit about how that works.
Sure. The outside consultant does that. And so based upon the written exam and based upon the assessment, it comes down to the 5, and then we find out who those finalists are. And that's when we're able to interview them publicly and then make our decision from there.
Okay.
Another issue that I just wanted to address and bring up was just the overall staffing and number of HPD officers that are out there. We know that this continues to be something that the department struggles with in trying to maintain and recruit new members to join the force. And certainly challenges have presented itself through COVID-19 and other events that have caused these numbers to go down through early retirement or whatever reasons why some may be leaving the force. Shannon, how important of an issue is this, and how do you feel that this can be addressed?
This is a very important issue, Ryan, and it's something the commission has actually been trying to address, just for the past 2 to 3 years, and it hasn't helped in the recruitment with respect to what's going on nationally. And what Chief has reported in talking with his colleagues from the Major Chiefs Association is that this is a nationwide issue. So I think locally, we're trying to address how we increase recruitment, how we ensure that once recruited, the officers actually stay. So I think with respect to the staffing shortages and what the union has brought up, we are, again, just asking Chief, what are you doing to address these issues, and bringing suggestions forward as well. And I think with the conversations and ongoing discussion, not only at the city council, but with the mayor, this will be able to be resolved. And what Chief has reminded us is that when folks are in need of emergency, when folks are calling 911, there will be a response. And that's what we want to ensure, that the public knows that they are going to be receiving a response if they dial 911.
And just to add some I just wanted to add some perspective on that, because I can appreciate the concern about the staffing shortage. I'm not 100% certain that the staffing shortage that's existing now, or that's existed in the last couple of years, is dramatically worse or different from the staffing shortages that existed before. In other words, vacancies in the police department or vacancies in the city, that's always been a problem. When I was the man, so one of the hats I had before was I was the managing director when Mayor Carlisle was the mayor, and back then in 2010, staffing shortages in the police department was an issue. So to me, I think it's an ongoing problem. it was part of our recommendations to the mayor. And one of the charter requirements that we have is to make a recommendation to the mayor in terms of what they can be doing with their budget. And so that was one of our recommendations, was that they really beef up their human resources department to be able to better recruit and retain officers, because that is good for the community.
I wanted to ask you, Doug, and you referenced the sort of conversation that's happening nationally about what policing should look like in today's world. There were, of course, a lot of political discussions around this, especially happening on the continent regarding defund the police, those movements on one side. And then, on the other side, there is, of course, a large Blue Lives Matter movement as well. So there's sort of these conflicting camps about what law enforcement looks like. How does that influence when you're going through this process and you're thinking about the next chief?
My own thought is I would just like the next chief to be aware of and open to those issues, so that she or he is able to talk about it, be open to it, and to be able to think about a vision for the department that goes forward, that addresses those things. I think people, my own sense, at least in the commission and among the community, is it's not so much defunding the police. I mean, I think that's a super loaded term, but I think it has more to do with what are the priorities of the department. In other words, what should the department be focusing on to better be able to enhance public safety and to be able to build up the trust of the community. That's kind of what I'm thinking, and I'm hoping that the next chief, whoever she or he is, will be someone who is very, very much able to talk about those issues, be open to those issues, and to be able to move the department forward in that respect.
You're coming into this search off the heels of recently, of course, what has happened with Chief Kealoha, and I believe that there's still in the community a sense of skepticism over the process of maybe not only selecting him, but this new chief, but just the trauma, if you will, that people are still facing or think about when they think about this position and all that happened during his time as the police chief. Shannon, how do you overcome something like that has stained the department in such a way that for whoever fills into this role, whether it be former police chief Ballard or this next chief, how they overcome something like that has stained this department, and how much can the commission do to help support the chief moving forward?
And thanks for bringing up Chief Ballard, because I think she was a bright light after the Kealoha administration in just ensuring and building trust within the community and within the department, because we can't forget about the department personnel who were at the front lines in, just the brunt of what was happening. But I think as the new chief is selected, we need to make sure they understand how traumatic that was and that would never occur again. And that's why I think what we're going through right now will be able to make that a priority and ensure that this new chief is aware of what the community expects and how they can build trust within not only the community, but the department as well.
Doug, I want to ask you, just in your time as a former attorney general in Hawaii, I want to get your thoughts. It's a law enforcement issue of another kind, and that is the scandal that's unfolding at the state legislature. Just to get your thoughts on that corruption case, the investigation, how you think all of that was handled, and how that body moves on from that.
Well, I have to say, I was traumatized from that. I think up until that time, I've always had the feeling that most people who are public officials in the city or in the state, most people who are leaders, follow the rules, and they do that. They care about it. It's very important to them. And then along the way, you have a few bad actors. To me, it was absolutely right to be able to that the U.S. Attorney's Office conducted this investigation and brought forth the charges and held former Senator English and former Representative Cullen responsible for that. I think that's important, that they be held responsible for the bad decisions that they did. I think what troubles me is that former Senator English and former Representative Cullen, they weren't outliers. They weren't people. They were in the inner circle. Like they were part of they held leadership positions. One was the majority leader, another one was holding committee leadership positions. And so I do think that this is a very important wake-up call to the legislature, to all city and state officials, to really do whatever they can to make sure that they are earning back the public trust. I think that's critical.
Our time here is almost done, but we did want to provide you an opportunity to present some just final thoughts here as you move through this process. And Shannon, I'll begin with you. This, as you said, could be a 4-month process, maybe shorter if things are expedited in any way. But your thoughts as you kind of head into this and your message to the community as we await to hear who this next chief will be.
Just thank you. Thank you for the community who have already reached out to us and continue to do so. We do meet twice a month publicly, and you are all welcome to provide input as we go through this chief selection process. And I just thank you, Ryan and Yoonji, for making this a priority so the community can hear directly from us what our expectations are, what the process is, and how they can remain involved. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Doug, a final thought from you as well on the process.
I'm just grateful that I get to serve on a commission with so many people who are of just great caliber, who come from different backgrounds and who have a very different perspective when it comes to law enforcement. For example, former fire chief Kenny Silva just got appointed to the police commission. I think that's a great choice, and I think he's going to bring a great perspective to all of us. And I think the public should appreciate that I'm hoping the public will appreciate that there will be 7 commissioners who are making this choice. And I'm grateful that I can be part of that.
All right. Well, we thank you both for being part of this conversation today and sharing your insights on where we're at in this process. We know, again, that there are a lot of people out there in the community who are waiting to hear what happens and who is ultimately selected. But we appreciate just getting an update on where we are through this process and hope to speak to you folks soon in the future once we kind of move down this path of selecting the next chief. So thanks so much.
Right.
Aloha.
Thank you.
Thank you. Of course, great to hear from Shannon Alivado and Doug Chin, both members of the Honolulu Police Commission, on where they are in the process of selecting the next chief. The chairwoman there acknowledging that this has taken longer than they had initially hoped, but Doug Chin and her both pointing out that they really want to be deliberate in this, that, the community, Doug Chin called it one of the biggest things to happen to the city, in recent memory. And that, of course, is the Kealoha scandal. And so as we recover from that, they want to be very careful in who they are selecting. They have, I believe they said 19 candidates at the moment, and they are going to whittle that down. An outside third party will whittle that down to 5, and then the police commission will make their decision. And as you noted, Ryan, there, it could take up to 4 months to do that.
Yeah, we also heard their thoughts about if this should be a person that is local or if this is someone that comes in from the mainland. We know that this continues to be a topic of discussion among many in the community, and not only with regards to this position, but it's often a topic that is brought up when any sort of position like this is made available. And many in the community feel that those in Hawaii should be established and should be able to take over positions like this because of their knowledge of culture and the uniqueness of Hawaii, while others will argue that sometimes we need some fresh blood. But we heard from both of them saying that it really is more about the person themselves, as long as they understand the uniqueness of Hawaii. It's more about some of the other qualities that they possess that will also be examined and looked at during this process.
Yeah, and interesting to hear about their process just in terms of gathering community feedback. They mentioned the high school students that gave their assessment in terms of what they wanted in a chief, integrity being one of the main points there. And then also that community survey that they held at the beginning of this month. Over 1,000 people responded. They said from all walks of life and from all over the island. They are still waiting to go through all of those responses, but that will also play into their decision making in terms of selecting the next chief. So we appreciate their time and coming on here. We know that a lot of you are very interested in this process, and so we appreciate both of them coming on. There's a lot of talk right now on the mainland and throughout about mask mandates, and will Hawaii be the lone state to continue to require indoor masking? We're going to bring that to our guest on Monday.
That's right. We'll be talking directly to Governor Ige. One of the issues that we will bring up, of course, is COVID-19, as well as where things are at with the state budget. Overall, submitted his ideas, his proposals, and his budget to the legislature that are now kind of going through his budget overall and cutting out some of the key initiatives and objectives of the governor's budget. So we look forward to having that conversation with the governor, and we hope you'll join us on Monday for another episode of Spotlight Hawaii. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you back here next week. Aloha.
Aloha.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Longstrugs and Beachside Roofing.